I felt quite lonely in my experience with my connection to animals and just in life in general. Like, this is something I've actually only learned a couple of years ago, that most people have some sort of a feeling of deep loneliness, because this is just how our society is set up. It's just not set up for deep connections. But yeah, just like Julie, the topic regarding the animals was a topic that I felt especially lonely with, and where there was a lot of pain and trauma for me that really challenged me. But yeah, I grew through it. And this is me in my natural habitat. This is the picture you saw of me, probably if you saw the announcement for this event. And that's me with my two piggy sons. It's Kjell and Alva. And in the back you can see the ears of our second dog, who stayed at home. Zuza is somewhere on the screen here, like you can't see her, but she was there as well. And yeah, that's just a small part of my animal family. I do have quite some animals as well. I've got 7 cows and some other animals. So yeah, it's short introduction into me and my crazy projects. I am self-employed since 3 years, and I call myself an artist and philosopher, and I'm running an animal sanctuary. And part of this is that I don't really have a clear script of how I work. Like, I'm just doing whatever I can in order to follow my goal, which is to create more healing in the relationship between humans and animals. And this is how stuff like this happens. Like, suddenly I'm meeting people that are like totally on the same path and are able to welcome me to, yeah, share my knowledge, or knowledge is maybe not the right word, it's just my feelings, basically. So yeah, I'm really grateful that you're here and you're willing to listen. And the first thing I actually feel like, what is the main message I have, is that what I've learned is that feeling is the thing that is connecting all of us. And feeling is basically the reason for everything we do, because nothing is done for no reason. And the main reason that drives action, no matter for humans or animals, is that this being that is acting something out at least hopes that this action will make it feel better. And this is why it is so important to really look for the roots behind the actions, no matter if it is with ourselves or with animals. And I'm really learning a lot about how to communicate with animals on this level that enables us to actually find the source of, for example, behavior that is misfitting, like that's just problematic and causing trouble. And yeah, that's my biggest passion, to really create this deep connection. So yeah, I think I would like to just talk shortly about what I think emotions actually are, because I think they're so important. This is what is driving everything, and this is what we are often missing out in our everyday life, because we don't really focus on the emotions but only on the actions, and we're missing out on an important part. And emotions are, from my definition, it's mainly a physical thing actually. It is something about the wisdom of our body. It's a lot about our intuition, it's a lot about the memory of our body that is actually responding to the present moment. And it's so interesting to see how we try to override these emotions and this intuition with our mind. And our mind is amazing. Like, humans are incredible. Our minds are really cool, but they're not able to override the emotions. And we're really messing stuff up on that level. So the thing is that even though we might not always be able to find the meaning behind our emotions, there always is a meaning. And we often have trouble with emotions because they are not rooted in the present moment, but in our past, and we do miss that connection. And then we feel like they don't really have a place in the present moment, and they don't really fit to the moment, but they're just a reaction of our deeper knowledge, of our deeper wisdom, that's not accurately understood. And that's often what's happening in conflict, for example, when people are getting into a fight with each other, that they feel like they react emotionally to something that triggers them, and then it escalates. And the real reason is not the topic we're talking about, it is the emotion that is being triggered. So that actually is the absolute same thing with animals as well. And this is actually something we share with maybe all kinds of conscious beings. It's difficult to say like where that ends, this kind of emotional connection. I wouldn't dare to say like plants don't feel it, but I would also not dare to say they do. I don't know. But what I can say is that animals definitely do feel it. And they're basically the same. They do express their emotions sometimes differently, and they might even experience them differently, but it is, and on the baseline, it's the absolute same for all of us. And this is the beautiful thing, because that is actually where we can create these kind of connections. And animals actually are even better in feeling than we are, because they don't have such a strong mind getting into their way. We are always trying to understand the things, and this is where we're missing out on the wisdom of our emotions and that deeper knowledge. Animals don't have that much resistance towards the present moment. They are much more receptive to what is just the truth right now. And that means they are much more connected to their emotions. And through that, they're just much more connected in general. And that is why they can teach us so much, and they can help us so much to really understand ourselves better and remember the things that we have forgotten, like collectively, the human collective. And they are really like unapologetically just expressing their truth, actually. This is basically what animals do. They are very, very authentic. And yeah, that's just as Julie said, that is what is lacking in our society. That is what is making us also lonely, because we're constantly busy with suppressing aspects of ourselves because we feel like they're bad and there's no space for them. And then we lose these parts of ourselves. We are losing ourselves, and we can't ever really create deep connections because parts of us are just missing, and we always feel like we're alone, with like the entirety of who we really are is never seen. And yeah, this is actually something that we all want, is this deep sense of connection. And this is also what we share with the animal kingdom, which we're actually part of. But that is, we all want connection. And we all want to feel a sense of oneness and belonging. And this is also why we can actually influence the behavior of animals intensely when we just work on the emotional level. That is so interesting to watch, because when we look at the way we're approaching animals in general, it is like really not on an emotional level. We think like we have to teach them every single detail about how to be alive. Like we are just teaching them, training them to do tricks and to somehow function in our human structures, and it's pretty exhausting. And for sure, they're not welcome to be truly themselves. We're just like pushing them into the structures we've built and trying to fit them into that, just as we're doing it with ourselves as well, but maybe even more intensely, because we do have much less empathy and compassion for them in general. But it's so interesting to see that that actually isn't necessary in the same way if we are able to connect with them on this emotional level. And it is so interesting to see that they're very, very open to do so. That is for, I think, two main reasons. And that is, firstly, that they're naturally always doing it. They're doing it with each other. They're doing it in general. They are just really emotional beings that are really connected in that way. But also, it's just the truth that they are dependent on us. They don't really have a choice, and this is just the system we've built. they need us for their survival in most cases. So they will, just like kids, will kind of go through every sort of horror and still try to be connected to their parents. It's the same with animals. They are in basically the same situation, so they really want to be connected to us. And actually, they won't ever disturb a connection consciously without a real important reason. Like, they might disturb connections, but not for no reason. If an animal is making a connection difficult, it is for sure that there is a problem, and this problem is not just the animal, because the animal itself will always try to sustain the connection and make it safe. And yeah, that's just because it's important for their survival even more than it is for us to be connected to them, even though that's not that easy, because we are also really dependent on them. But it's really direct for them. They really need us for their basic needs. They need us for their food, for just to go out and pee. Like, it's incredible how dependent they are on us. So it really is sometimes difficult for me to understand how people can still blame the animal for all their behaviors, because they think the animal would actively try to ruin the relationship. The animal would never do that, not if it wouldn't feel forced to do so. So we actually have a real good point to work with them and to connect with them really deeply and have an immense impact on how they behave. And yeah, that actually is the thing I'm learning and trying to learn together with other humans, with myself and with animals, is how to connect on this emotional level to actually have an impact. And the main thing is, in order to be able to regulate the emotions of another being that are driving its actions, the first thing is that we have to be connected to ourselves. And we can do that like Julie did and like I did. The hard way, like not being connected with ourselves and then going into this sort of connection and somehow figuring it out. And it's possible, but it's really painful, and it's painful for both sides because we're just hurting each other all the time. I did that with my animals on an immense scale, just failing all the time because I didn't know how to deeply connect. I tried and I wanted to, but I couldn't. And I think it's time for us to learn how to actively do that. And this means really learning how to connect to ourselves. And this is something we all have to learn, because that is, like, we can only meet each other on the level that we've met ourselves. It's just such a baseline for everything. So in order to do that, we have to learn how to really notice our emotions. This is so difficult because we are often so busy in our minds, and we are often so busy devaluing our emotions and pushing them away, because we're trying to function no matter what, and we're trying to not really care about them. But this is the first step. We really have to be able to feel closely in the present moment what is happening inside us. And then we have to learn to notice what is actually triggering our emotions, because as I said, we often have, we've got such a ballast of old emotions, so much old stuff, so much wisdom also, like deep wisdom that is in our bodies and ingrained in our bodies, just there in order to guide us on our way. That's amazing, but it also is a lot of really heavy stuff often, a lot of projections, a lot of coping mechanisms, a lot of stuff we've just never looked at that just became part of ourselves but isn't really real. So really we have to be aware of what is triggering our emotions in order to find out where they're actually coming from, in order to be able to understand their message, because that is basically what emotions are. They're not like character traits. No one is character angry. No. The anger is saying something. The anger has a message for us, and if we don't listen, it's just going to grow and grow and grow. But actually, it is nothing more than a messenger. And we have to really learn how to listen to these messages and understand them, and find out, are they actually grounded in this present moment, or do they have a long history back and might have nothing to do with what is currently going on. But this is what we have to practice. And then we have to find ways to consciously and actively relieve to find ways to really, like, as I said, it's a lot about physical. There are many techniques to relieve stress and relieve emotions, also positive emotions, through breath work and through yoga and whatever you can do with your body, basically. You can also be taking a nap or eating something special. These ways, and also creating active change, that can also be part of relief. If the actual trigger of a negative emotion or positive emotion or whatever is actually in the moment of creating a change, does change the emotions, but it's not the main reason, because it often is so deeply in our bodies that just changing the world outside won't change the feeling. This is also what all people notice when they just like try to change their life, sell everything, try to go on a travel and think then they will feel free, and they start on the road and they just notice like, no, I just don't feel really free, and it's just another sort of hamster wheel. And that is because our emotions are often so much deeper than what is going on around us. So we really have to find some ways to relieve that charge and rewire our emotional experience about the world and how we see the world. And this is kind of what is setting us up to then actually create a change in our relationships, in our personal life and in our collective life. And this is also what is happening with animals. Like, they do go through these processes as well. That is why I've got a little clip of Alva and Kiel when they were a little smaller. Like you can see how they are releasing the emotions of the horror they went through in the fattening farm, where they were kept in the industry. This is when they came to me. The video might be a bit, yeah, there it is. They were playing, which is of course also a way to release emotions, but it mainly just shows how cute they are. And this is a bit too dark, but in a second you will see something that I would like to show you. So here you can see him shaking, and actually I had moments where they were shaking so much that I thought they would die. That was in the first weeks when they arrived. Always when they fell asleep, they were shaking their whole bodies. And this was like releasing emotional charge out of them. There was so much pain, so much fear stuck inside them that just needed to come out. And that was the way how it happened. It happened in a safe environment, and when they just calmed down and they could release it. This is actually how our bodies can do it as well. The problem is just we often don't allow our bodies to do that. And then we have built up emotions like way too much, and the charge is way too strong, and it's difficult to really relieve it. Sleeping piglets are really cute. I wish I could show them to you in real life. I've spent, I don't know, many hours laying next to them and just healing with them, because it was a real healing process for me as well. I've spent a lot of time on pig farms as a child, and I always wanted to rescue piglets, and I've tried maybe 100 times, and I always failed. They all died. I couldn't do anything. And this really was like, just as Julie said, it was a feeling of gaining my power back to finally manage to rescue 2 of these little guys that for sure would have died otherwise. It's a bit sad that this is a bit too dark, but yeah, they're super cute. And I think one of the most misunderstood creatures on planet Earth, and maybe one of the reasons why we humans do suppress and mistreat them so immensely, is because they actually are so strong and so powerful in so many ways that you can't just abuse them a little bit. It doesn't work, because they don't let that happen. If you want to abuse them, you will have to go all in. You will have to take everything away from them until they will accept what is happening to them. And this is basically what we do to pigs. We take everything away from them, like everything that really matters for a pig. Yeah, these little guys made my life a whole bit lighter, also a whole bit heavier, because as Julie shared, it's just a lot of responsibility to take care of these animals. But I still feel like it frees me. It frees me, and it makes me so much lighter and happier to see them being just alive. Now, today, like right now, they're grown, not grown up, but much bigger, and we go on hikes like for kilometers and kilometers in the forest. I don't have a lot of videos of that, but if you're interested, I'm on social media and I'm sharing a lot. Julie is there too. She doesn't like to make advertisements. But yeah, you can check it out and see a lot of what we do today. But yeah, this is basically what we have to do. We have to reconnect with our emotions, and we have to learn how to regulate them in order to have some kind of a way to then regulate the emotions of another being. We can't like start with them and leave us out of the game. Like, we really have to start with ourselves. And yeah, this is the main basic thing we have to do. And then we have to, part of this is also to be able to feel everything. Like, this is a big issue in our society because we really want to feel good, and that's totally understandable. But it does mean that we are leaving out a whole part of emotions, and we're trying to push them away. And this actually makes empathy impossible. It's hard to understand that really and really take it in. But if you try to feel good, you won't be able to really feel with someone who's just not feeling good. And this is, I think, one of the main reasons why we don't do anything about the horrors in the animal industry. We don't want to look there. Like, we don't really want to feel that. But that does not mean that it doesn't happen, and it does not mean that it isn't horrible. It does just mean that we're not aware of it. And that's a big problem also with ourselves and with other people. Like, we tend to override the negative emotions and try to push them away until they just can't be pushed away anymore, and they get too intense to handle. And this is very dangerous. It really just is dangerous, and we are shooting ourselves in the foot, because feeling an emotion is much less problematic than dealing with the consequences of constantly suppressed emotions, because that has consequences and we can't avoid them anymore. At some point we just can't. So we really have to be able to feel it all the pain and all the suffering and all the fear, in order to really create like a whole picture of who we are and who the animal is, and to kind of root into reality and not just into our fantasies about what we wish would be real. And that also means a lot of, just becoming aware of our own patterns and our own behavior, our own coping mechanisms of how we deal with the world and how we interact with the world and how we see the world, because that is so important. If we want to connect to another being, we have to be aware about like who we are and how we see things, so that we don't so that we know how we see the world, in order to not override the reality of what is with just our view. We have to be able to differentiate between our perspective and the reality. And the reality is usually much more than what we see, and we have to be open for that. We can't just stick to our common way of thinking and our common beliefs. Like, we really have to be open to see the world from a completely different perspective, in order to be able to be open to listen to someone who will tell you something that's different from what you think. And that's something animals will do all the time, because they just experience the world so differently. And if we stick to our belief, we won't understand them. But that doesn't mean that they don't talk, or that it is impossible to understand. We just really have to be aware about how we try to form reality just with our own little mind. And then we really have to listen and to really feel with others. And that is something that's difficult for most of us, like basically all of us. We often we listen in order to respond. We don't listen to actually take in another perspective. We listen in order to kind of override everything and just, maybe you understand what I mean. Like, I feel it really strongly. I used to struggle to listen at all. Like I felt like some things just stuck in my mind, but most of it was just gone. Like I wasn't really taking it in, and I can fully understand if you feel that way right now. It's so difficult to really open up and make space for a different perspective, because there's so much going on inside ourselves, but we have to create this space in order to be able to take in someone else. And especially if this person is different from us, and animals are different. They are also the same in many ways, but they are also very different. And we have to let go of these human concepts of thinking in order to understand them. So clearing ourselves is basically the main tool we need in order to be able to create a clear communication and connection with animals. But there are also some more tools that we can use in our everyday life, and I'm just going to share some glimpses into what I do. I think it's difficult because it's so individually, like it's so different. I can't really say like, just do this or that and all your problems are going to be gone or anything. I don't know if any one of you has any animals. Are you living together with animals? No. But you're for sure connected with animals in some way, because we are all connected in some way. We meet sometimes animals, but also we consume them. We consume so many different sorts of products of animals, and let's see, maybe some of you will need these tools one day. I just have one of the main things I try to really remember is to work with gratitude, because it's so, like we're so used to just demand things from animals and say like, this is my dog, so now I want it to sit and it has to sit, like just because I'm a human and I'm going to say that. And often what I heard is that, we provide them with their lives, like we give them everything, and I pay all that money. So like it's often with horses, people say like, I pay all that money, I do all that work, so now the horse has to work back and give me something and let me ride and do what I say. And I'm going to tell you like, no, that's not how a healthy relationship works. You can't like make someone completely dependent on you and take away every way they have to fend for themselves. And it's impossible in our modern society for an animal like a horse just to go out on the street and live by themselves. Like, we wouldn't allow that. My cows, if they run away, I have to be scared that they will be shot. Like, they can't. We take away all their rights and all their freedom, and then we say, okay, but in order to get their basic needs met, they now have to work. That's basically what we do with ourselves as well. We're just putting ourselves in a constant situation where we have to like prove our worth and our value in order to be allowed to be alive and get our basic needs met and have some sort of place to live and something to eat on a table. And that's also what we do with the animals, and we do it even more intensely. Like with the milk dairy cows, they have like, farmers often see it like, I'm working all the time, they're working all the time, we're both in the same situation, nothing wrong, it's just how life is, so they have to work in order to get their food. That basically is how life currently is, but that's not how a healthy relationship works. You can't like say just because you're giving them food you can take everything from them, take their babies, take their milk, take their lives, like you've been giving them food. That's not how it works. Animals don't owe us anything, and just because we give them the basic needs, we're no heroes, they're captive. We're keeping them captive, and then that's it. We don't have like a big hero story behind that. So we can't demand them to give us something. We can ask them to do so. And the good thing is, animals are often really open to do what we want. They want to be connected, and they want to be alive, and they will do what it takes, but only if it is somehow in alignment with their own well-being. We act in ways that are just totally ununderstandable for them or go against their interests. Of course, they might resist that, but usually they're really open. So it is really our responsibility to create like the opportunity for them to connect to us and to not just be slave keepers and narcissists. That's actually the reality of how many animal-human connections work today. It's really traumatizing for the animals and also for the humans. Because most humans actually don't want to be the bad guy in the relationship. They want to feel connected to the animals as well. They want to be deeply connected. They want to feel seen themselves. They want to feel loved. And animals do have the ability to give a lot of love. But we often stand in the way and make things super complicated for them, and then we don't get love. We get a lot of resentment and a lot of challenges. It's really uncomfortable. And that's necessary for us to learn, but it's not necessary for the world to work. We could do it in another way. So what we really need to do is to create a relationship that is based on doing nothing. Like, we really need to have this, to really have time together to do nothing. To not expect the animals to do what we want, to really open space where they can be who they really are, and where we can be who we really are, because that is the gift animals are giving us. They are inviting us to be authentically ourselves fully. In every moment, this is what they will respond the very best to. If we are authentically ourselves, they will respond to that. And that is the gift we can get if we're able to receive it and to give it back. And I think that's really beautiful, and it is something that really changed my life. And I think it could change the lives of so many more. I've got an example of my ox Ursus. He is one of these animals that are not always acting according to what I would want to. He's kind of a big guy, and I don't know if the video is going to start, but yeah, he has, I'm going to let this roll for a moment. That's him. On our last hike a few weeks ago, Julie was part of it. I would, like in a second, I would have wanted this video to stop, but now you can see him there. He has a special gift, and that is that he is really sensitive to authentic boundaries, which does also mean that he's really not sensitive to unauthentic boundaries. So you can really not work with him. Can you stop the video? With boundaries that are not grounded in your own truth. Like, the most important thing you need to have is, like, it's so difficult to describe, but you have to feel the boundary with your whole entire body and your whole entire being in order for him to fully understand and accept it. And that is a challenge, because you've got like a big guy about 900, maybe even 1,000 kilogram heavy, who's like not interested in just pleasing you. He won't do that. He won't just do things in order for you to smile. He will do what he wants. And he's interested in working together with you if you're able to create a close connection. But that's not something you can just like magically get out of the air. You really have to create that connection, and you have to be really grounded in yourself. And I've got this example. We've had a lot of struggles with him in the past with overstepping boundaries with people, especially with women, which is really interesting. He hasn't really hurt someone, but he has scared people actually nearly to death. Like, people came to the point where they thought he would kill them, which was really scary also for me. He used to be like bumping with his head, like not too strongly, but too strongly to feel safe with him. And this is a moment that just like accidentally got filmed on our hike. These are two of my friends, Isabel and Hannah. And he will now approach Isabel, and you can see really beautifully how she's setting her boundary. And you can see like that wouldn't work with just somebody doing it, but you can really see how grounded she is and how calm she is, and how she's setting a boundary with him that really works. You can play that. You can see him approaching. He's in a special energy, like really tense, and she's just using her stake like a wall in front of her. And he's getting his head down, she's using the stick and moving on. And he fully takes that. Everything is fine. They move on. In other situations, this is how these situations escalate. And she can deal with that super calmly. So they move on. And actually a moment later, he's approaching Hannah, my other friend. You can see him coming again. She is a bit less calm, but she does basically the same.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, video is a bit. It's going to work in a second, hopefully.
I went too fast.
Yeah. There's a second situation with Hannah and him. Maybe this is, yeah, you can see her pushing it away, creating space and moving on. You can see that she's a bit struggling because it really is scary and it really is difficult with an animal like this when you know like he has a pattern of being intense. It's really difficult to deal with that, but it is possible. And this is just what I wanted to show you. Like, I don't have clips of him really escalating the situation, but I can tell you he did. And in this moment, he didn't. And that the reason for that was how these two girls reacted and how they managed this situation. And he's super responsive to that. He doesn't actually, like, his reason for escalating situations is actually not a negative one. He's not angry, even though that also is part of it, but he mostly is overexcited. And the problem with someone that big being overexcited and coming too close is that it just easily is getting scary, and then people are getting defensive. And the situation where it escalated the most with another friend of mine who started to hit him. Like, even in that situation, I still am really sure he didn't want it to kill her, but the thing just exploded because she was getting into the energy of just fighting against him, hitting him, and that's not a good idea to do with such a big boy. And yeah, it's good if there's, wait for a second. But this is where we can actually create solutions if we are able to manage a situation like that on an emotional level to not make the charge bigger. And the thing is that something we often misunderstand about boundaries is that boundaries actually have nothing to do with the other person. Boundaries are not about what someone else can or can't do, because we are not in control of that. Like, even if you have got a stick in your hand, you can't control an animal like him. Like, if he wants to just trample you to the ground, he can do that. You can't control him, and it's so important to not even try. The only thing you can do is to say yes or no to something. And then the important thing is to be connected, because someone who is connected with you will care. Someone who is connected to you will honor your yes or your no. If someone isn't connected to you, you can say whatever you want, it doesn't matter. But if you're connected and you're able to say a clear yes or a clear no, that will be understood and it will be honored. Our emotions are impacting our behavior towards everything. And just as I said earlier already, like, we really have this issue as humans that we want to feel good, and therefore we push away things that make us not feel good, or we push away bad emotions in general. And that is setting us up for a society where everyone feels lonely and no one feels really seen. And we're creating dysfunctional systems all around in our own individual lives and in the society at large, because we're not looking at the whole picture. We're not looking at the whole person we are. We're not looking at the wholeness of others around us. And that is also what is making it possible that the biggest horrors of this world are possible. It's only possible because we are not welcoming the emotions that are part of it. We really want to feel good, and we look away whenever something feels bad. And that is just what makes the real horrors possible. Also, like, our overconsumption of basically everything, like, no matter where we look, all of these things are actually rooted in deep pain. And we're trying to run away from it, and by doing so, we're just creating more and more and more pain around us. And with creating more pain around us, we're also creating more pain within us, because we are all connected in one. And we're not creating solutions, which is something we really need, and I think we are all longing for that. And I think this is where animals could step in and help us on our healing journey, because they really have the ability to remind us of the things we've forgotten about ourselves and our collective humanness and our collective planet, like our collective everything. And I really hope that we will find ways to step back into authentically and integrity together and take these lessons we can learn from them. And maybe one day create a peaceful world, not only for humans, but also for humans and for animals. And I've got a sentence I just read, which I really like, is a message of peace. The peace is saying you're always pairing me with silence, but actually I'm not still. I'm the sound of change being good. Wait, I'm gonna start that again because it's too good to be messed up. So the message of peace is that peace wants us to know that we are always pairing it with silence, but peace actually isn't silent. Peace is the sound of chains being broken, and freeing everyone who is captive in fear. And I think we can all really use some peace and some freedom from fear and some deep connection in this world. Thank you so much for listening. I'm actually really curious about talking with you now, because I feel a bit strange just having showered you all over. I'm really curious to hear your experiences and your thoughts.
To them birds flying free, fish in the sea, flowers and trees, every little bumblebee. I wanna sing.